Good evening, one and all. How we all doing tonight? So tonight, I just thought I'd talk a little bit about cryptids in general, not anything specific. Um, I think a lot of people forget that they're based on myth and legend from a long time ago, and that there might be a basis of truth somewhere in the noise. Now, I'm not saying that these cryptids are real, but I'm saying at some point, somebody saw something they couldn't explain. Now, does that mean that they didn't know what it was? Nah. I think it has more to do with the fact that they couldn't either get a good look at it or figure out what it was. And what I'm talking about is like the not deer. You know, the deer that stares at you menacingly, vacant eyes, sometimes stands on its hind legs, has parts of it sloughed off or not formed properly. Well, the fact is that, you know, there are deer that suffer from like a wasting disease. I can't remember specifically what it's called, but there's a wasting disease. Deer also get cancer, which means that it can affect them in many multitude of different ways. They also forget that deer are rather hardy. I mean, they can take a lot of damage and actually have a pretty decent immune system so that it doesn't always take them out. You know, just for an example, you know, I mean, there's umpteen million different deer, and I'm not talking about a specific species of deer. There's several different kinds, and they have a tendency to have various different effects, which would explain why some people who are used to one kind of deer, maybe another kind has migrated in and has completely different habits than what they're used to. And so, you know, the not deer could be easily explained through those. You know, whether it's fungal, whether it's a virus, a bacterium, tumors, various infections, I mean, just even fevers. I mean, think about how weird sometimes you get when you get sick and you have a fever. You know, that can lead to all sorts of weirdness. You know, you act differently. I mean, I know there was a story of my dad who had a very high fever. I can't remember what fever he had, whether it was yellow fever, scarlet fever. I know it was one of those ones that I always think of as being an older one, but he was running a pretty high temperature and was hallucinating. And thankfully, he didn't actually grab the shotgun, but he thought he grabbed the shotgun. And this is when he was like between 8 and 12. And he lived up in the backwoods of Idaho, up in a place called Yellow Pine. I think even to this day, I looked it up not that long ago, and it only has like still like 300 people that reside there. And at the time, I think there was actually more people there. But anyway, he grabbed what he thought was the shotgun, but I think it was a broom. And he was out, you know, shooting commies. Because he swore that the red scare had gotten us. And, you know, no, I mean, it was just him being on a fever. So, you know, specifically like the not deer, I mean, that really could be what causes the mythology behind that one. You know, and there's other ones that are interesting. Take like, I mean, the most common, you know, Bigfoot, Sasquatch. There's actually several different explanations for that. I mean, it could have started from just a wild man in the woods. You know, I mean, everybody points to, you know, the 1950s and how the guy, you know, put the footprints on the ground, or the Patterson-Gimlin film. And I mean, even to this day, the Patterson-Gimlin film is controversial on whether or not it's real or not, even though somebody did admit that they hoaxed it. But the guy said that he was the one wearing the outfit. But I mean, he'd have to be very large, or there'd have to be some very interesting film tricks that a couple of backwood boys in the Cascades might have a bit difficulty pulling off. And that's why, I don't necessarily trust him coming forward and saying he did it. I mean, especially since he didn't fit the shape. Be honest. He was too short for what we saw in the film, unless there was, again, movie tricks used. But it's never really addressed how a couple of backwoods boys, who are out backpacking, riding horses, decide to take a film camera and make the Patterson-Gimlin film. I mean, of course, also the other side of that explanation is what were a couple of backwoods boys doing with a camera in the first place? Why did they go up there to film? Maybe I need to do some more research on it, but it seems weird. Then you have like short-lived cryptids, like the Dover Demon, which I think it was in Dover, Maryland. Somebody saw a frog-like thing underneath an overpass or in a sewer, spot or a water flow spot. And it freaked people out. But as far as I know, there was only one sighting of it. And I'm not exactly sure on how it became, I don't want to call it popular, but why does it still persist to this day? I mean, if you look at, mythology, I mean, there's a lot of different frog-like, I don't want to call them demons, but frog-like cryptids in various different areas and various different mythologies, legends. So, I mean, you have to ask yourself, did the person see something that inspired those legends? But it's an extremely rare find, a rare see? Who knows? I mean, I know that we think in our day and age that we have explored everything and everywhere. The problem is that no, we haven't. We're finally getting to the point of technology that could, to a certain degree, but I don't think it's going to see everything. I mean, if you've ever been in a forest, a thick forest, you could walk by a cave entrance that's less than 100 yards from you, and you never know it. Hell, sometimes less than 100 feet. Could be 50 feet. You'd never know. It could be some wild animal den that's so used to people going by that it stays still and quiet because it doesn't want to be hunted. And I think a lot of people forget that yeah, you can have nature hikes in national parks, but not all of that place has been surveyed, been accessed, been looked at. I mean, it's a rough idea. It's like, okay, we have this idea of how big this is. And then they'll map the borders, but I wonder how much they actually explore the interior of those borders. Do they just find it, oh, this trail's easy, for people to make and blah, blah, blah. And they go through and they do all of that, never realizing that they may have passed right by who knows what. I mean, just think about how many missing people have been found in like national parks or hiking trails that aren't national parks, and how many people would have had to have passed by their unfortunate bodies and never knew it was there until somebody went out looking. We forget that even in our cities, it's easy to hide some big stuff that you'd never even see. And half the time, if somebody did see it, you wouldn't believe them. Especially since most likely the people that are going to see, say a urban cryptid, a city dweller cryptid, are going to be the homeless or the people that are out on the streets late at night, which generally involves some kind of drinking or drug. How likely are you to believe an inebriated person who's screaming about monsters in the sewers? I mean, and how long has that mythology been around? Monsters in the sewers. And I mean, again, I think a lot of people don't realize how explored yet unexplored I mean, a lot of people don't even realize how deep down, you have to pile the skyscrapers pillars down into the soil just to make sure that the building's stable. I mean, there's a lot of things that we do without thinking. Buildings have to have a very solid footprint, especially skyscrapers, with how deep they have to go down. They could unintentionally, carve right up against a cave that they didn't even know was there. And to something that digs through rock, a concrete parking garage ain't very hard for it to dig through. Especially when you think about some of the places you don't see. Utility spots in large buildings. Things that your brain just automatically ignores. I mean, elevator rooms. A lot of people don't even realize that there is elevator maintenance or mechanical rooms in large buildings, and it's not always at the top or at the bottom. Sometimes they're in the middle. It all depends. We think we've seen stuff because of movies, an elevator shaft, and it's like, yes and no, because not every elevator looks the same in an elevator shaft. There's, I don't know how many different ways of doing things. And again, these are all just ways of doing things that most people don't understand are even there. They're special areas that you don't get access to, and half the people that do have access to it, whether it's security or whether it's maintenance people, bosses, foremen, whatever, going into the back of these places, they only go to their places that they're supposed to. Who knows how many forgotten corners there are? Just ask any urban explorer and some of the creepy things they've ran into. I mean, just think about how many cryptids could be birthed from what they see. Things that they think is just some, druggy. And the fact is that it's not. It might be something else entirely. I mean, I remember a movie from mid to late 90s called Mimic. Hey, what's up, T-Row? How's it going, sir? But Mimic was about like these giant cockroach type things that learned how to mimic people. I mean, of course, cockroaches don't get that big, but we all know that insects love to mimic other things. Hell, I took a picture of a bug just out here on my fence that looked like a leaf. Cateriid, I think is what it was called. Katydid. Nice, cool. I'm just talking about the hidden truth behind cryptids and all of these stories may not always be what people think. I mean, it may not be, Bigfoot. It may not be, but there's always some truth to the story. 9 times out of 10, if a story is going to persist, it's not about somebody trying to hoax it. What they take is they take a story they've heard and then they'll hoax it. Very rarely do people hoax something whole cloth. And we forget that there is a basis of truth in things like that. That in a lot of these things, there is some truth to what they saw. Again, it's not necessarily what people think they saw. It's not necessarily this big bad evil thing or an actual monster. Sometimes it's just a human in a big fur coat in the woods. Or a hermit that doesn't want to be around people. And yeah, he's probably killed a couple of bears or maybe found some bears, to skin and make them coat out of, and voila, Bigfoot. But also on the other side, that doesn't explain why there is so many myths and legends before hermits lived in the woods about these things just in America alone. Let alone, I mean, the abominable snowman or Yeti predates any of our Bigfoot mythology in the Americas, except for the Native American mythologies. So you have to ask yourself, where did these stories come from? You know, what is the truth behind them? Like I was reading up on the Jersey Devil, and I didn't realize how convoluted but yet simple that story really is. And I'm hoping soon to record that narration and put it up on a channel before the month's end, but I don't know if I'm going to get to it, but I'm going to try. But the idea is that looking at where the roots of these stories, and some of these are really hard to get to. Also, there's a lot of people that are pretty invested in the story. They're very invested in cryptids being real of some kind or another. We want it to be real. And real in the way we believe it's real. Not necessarily real in the way of it might, you know, it might be. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but you know, we get this image in our head about what is real and what isn't, and what we think a thing is. It's like a while back I was explaining, you know, my theory on Bigfoot is a tree squid. And I mean, I could lay out several evidence and have it make sense. But just because it's an explanation doesn't mean it's the explanation. You know, and that's all I mean. Is just because you can explain something, you can, you know, it's like all those people that go through and like, oh, well, we can hoax this thing. You're right, you can. There's a lot of things we can hoax. I could hoax a flamingo. I mean, that wouldn't really be that hard. But say, put it in Alaska where they're not supposed to be. And then suddenly, you know, you've got some wild stories of the pink flamingo of Alaska, of the greater Kodiak area. You know, I mean, it's stuff like that, you know. Just because I can hoax a thing, that wouldn't explain it, though, is what I mean. You know, sorry, my brain went off on a tangent, and it does that. Where we have these explanations that we don't like. And I think part of that is we do have an emotional investment in keeping the wonder in the world. But I think the other side of that is that we also might feel that it's not quite the real explanation. That it's not quite right. Whatever we're hearing, whatever we're seeing, you know, being told to us that this is the truth, something's wrong. You know, and sometimes we're wrong. Sometimes we're wrong that there isn't anything wrong with that explanation. Take the lizard man from, I want to say it was Georgia, but it may not have been Georgia, where one person's car was attacked by this lizard man, and there was some really gnarly evidence. And then somebody tried to fake up evidence, and they took a drill to their car and sandpaper and all of this to make it look good. And yeah, you could tell right away that this person was hoaxing, but that first car, it looked like that car was attacked by alligators, except for the bite marks were wrong, I think. And I think a lot of people forget that there was a first case where the truth of that even baffled a cop, if I remember right, because they looked at the evidence and the pictures, and it's like, this doesn't look right. And I think we forget that there is times like that where there is cases that baffle us, these one-offs. And Just because you can explain 90% or even 99% of these things away. Well, what about that 1% you can't explain? What does that mean? Why does this 1% exist? I mean, it's truly unknown. It's just like when you look at Project Blue Book and they talk about being able to explain away, what was it, 80 to 90% of the stories. Okay, that's fine. But what about that other 10% you can't explain? That 10% is truly unknown. And sure, maybe it's just because you don't have an explanation for it yet. But that doesn't mean we stop looking. I mean, obviously, even the government said that. I mean, they kept up with Project Blue Book. What was it? Signs, ATIP. You know, I mean, even to this day, they still look up these unidentified aerial phenomenon, as they call it, or frankly, it's just UFOs, unidentified flying objects. I don't like UAP. They just updated the language to make it sound less woohoo crazy, yet why not just legitimize the original name? But whatever, you know, I mean, that's my feelings on it. Do I believe that aliens are visiting us? Not intentionally. And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand. We live in a practically infinite universe. Yes, I know it's not infinite, but for all intents purposes to the human mind, it is infinite. The human race couldn't live long enough to explore it all. By that time, we would have evolved into something else if we survive that long. You know, I mean, and that's the point. You can't just explore everything. The other thing is we forget that we're relatively young as worlds go. There's worlds out there that even 1 or 2 billion years older, which, I mean, if the universe is really 14.8, I think was the last number I remember hearing. 1 billion years, one way or the other, to the age of the universe isn't really much, 1/15th. But when it comes to technology, I mean, everything humanity's done has been in the last 20,000 years. When you stack that against 1 billion, or even 500 million, or even 1 million years, you know, your margin of error of an intelligent species evolving on another planet and figuring things out, I mean, that's light years ahead of us. And I mean that intentionally, light years ahead of us. So for all we know, the UFOs that visit us are the equivalent of a Sunday driver that got lost. You know, the equivalent of somebody driving down, you know, Nevada and accidentally ended up at Area 51. You know, they took a wrong turn. You know, is there, and I'm just talking about the 1 to 2% we can't explain and that there's no real explanation. So when you put it in terms like that, you know, it's like, oh, you know, they're not going to make a, you know, 10,000 year difference. Like, how do we know? How do we know that how they mark time is the same as how we mark time? I mean, we use arbitrary marker. I can't remember which atom. Was it cesium? Some atom's vibration, and that's roughly equivalent to a second. We picked that particular atom because it's roughly equivalent to the second as we already knew it. It was closest to what we thought of. Because we decided to divide our planet into 360. Because there's 360 degrees in a sphere, or in a circle. Again, we did this. There's no real reasoning to it. You know, the basis of our numbers is arbitrary, and we found things to justify those numbers. Unless somebody can prove me wrong. I mean, why is an hour 60 minutes? Why isn't it 100 minutes? Why do we mark in the USA the day by 12-hour chunks? 12 hour to noon, 12 hours to midnight. It doesn't make sense to me. Yeah, sure, the clock is 24 hours, give or take. So why not make a clock that goes exactly 24 hours? And that 24 hours means that how the Earth rotates. Oh, but it's not even. So what? You make corrections, which is basically what we've done now. I also hate the arbitrariness of our months. But again, these are how we mark things. But who's to say an alien has the same kind of markers? Who's to say that their lifespan is anywhere near the same as ours? And it doesn't even have to be, longer. They can be shorter. They may have, a 40-year lifespan, but a rapid brain growth. They have 40-year lifespan, but their brain goes to the equivalent of a human 25-year-old in, say, the first 2 years. They're already talking, walking, moving, learning. Super fast, some kind of learning machine that helps them learn all the basics. And then they can expand upon that knowledge for the next 30 years. And because of the taper off at the end. So also this would make generational ships faster, so to speak, more viable because they'd have a shorter lifespan. I know that doesn't make sense, but when you have a faster population that dies off faster, but breeds relatively stable, you will you'll keep the waste down, because you'd have to assume that they'd have a more efficient system, of eating, of food, whatnot. There's just so much that it could be. Now, is that the way it is? No, I'm just giving you a off-the-cuff explanation. An explanation of how I could see it happening, of why this would work. But for all we know, they don't even visit us directly. These could just be probes. I mean, look at 3I Atlas. This comet that's coming through, that's an extrasolar thing. And I hate how people keep calling it interstellar, but it's not. It's extrasolar. It's I guess interstellar, but I mean, we don't know how far it goes. We know it's extrasolar. I know there's been descriptions of it being technology or whatnot. I don't know. I mean, for all we know, it's something that was designed in whatever, few 100,000 years ago by some alien race that's no longer there. And it was just designed as an electronic probe to drop off stuff, to investigate, to look through things, to understand things. And it's sending stuff back unknown. So here's the thing. When I'm talking about cryptids, because I put aliens in with cryptids, because I'm sure there's some truth there and there's some lies. That's just how the world works. That's how it all goes. I'm sorry. And in the end, again, I will say, there is truth to all the stories. There's some level of truth, even to the hoaxes, because you don't just come up with a hoax whole cloth. You use something to hang the framework on, or else the hoax isn't going to work. You can't just drum something up. There has to be some reason to run the hoax. And I think a lot of people forget that if you're going to lie, you have to add truth. Otherwise, it's useless. And it's, often, people drum up a hoax and you realize it's a hoax and it just dies. Others, on the other hand, keep going. They keep going and they keep going and they become something else entirely. Take like what I was researching on the Jersey Devil. Now, I'm not finished with the Jersey Devil, but what I've researched so far is that most likely this was invented by Benjamin Franklin because he had a rival in the publishing industry that was using more occult symbolism for his almanac versus Benjamin Franklin's Poor Richard's Almanac, which he tried to be a lot more scientific, as Ben Franklin would want to do. And because this guy was into occultism and stuff like that, Benjamin Franklin, being the humorist and satirist he was, he drummed up this story about this guy dying, predicting his death, because it was more of a play on how the Leeds family's almanacs worked and that they were predicting through woo-woo, where Poor Richard was predicting through science. Now, at the time, you also have to remember it wasn't really accepted science. So people would say that about Benjamin Franklin's, but either way, the prediction failed, as it should have. But Benjamin Franklin, being Benjamin Franklin, he just rolled with it and just said that, most likely the guy died anyway. Now he's just haunting me because I must be punished. And he kept rolling with that, calling him a devil, a demon, keep pushing the story. Well, these guys also had pissed off the Quakers, because it's not just one Leeds. It was Daniel and Titan Leeds so far in my research, who were producing this almanac at different times. Now, the Leeds family were Quakers. They converted to Anglicanism. That's hard to say. They were Anglicans. But they also researched a bunch of the esoterica of, Christian esoterica, pagan esoterica. They did a lot of the things that were very forbidden at the time. And so the Quakers published a tract, as they were called at the time, basically what we would think is a hit piece or a pamphlet, decrying them as demons, basically going with the devil. It also didn't help. Yeah, gotta love English. It also didn't help that the Leeds family on their family crest had a wyvern, which basically looks exactly like what the Jersey Devil is described as. Other than it doesn't have the hooves, but otherwise it has a long face, much like a goat or a horse. It's got the wings, the tail, and so all of these things conflated into being the Jersey Devil or the Leeds demon. What's even funnier, knowing how Benjamin Franklin worked, most likely this was attached to a story about the Leeds family, but it may have been conflated because there's other stories, earlier stories, from what I could see, about Leeds Point, which from what I could see isn't necessarily linked to this particular Leeds family. So he may have used an already existing myth and legend and attached this Leeds family by way of conflation, causing, the common people to be conflated because it's Benjamin damn Franklin. People are going to listen to him. So, there's all sorts of stuff that this could be, but I just think it's funny that we can trace the Jersey Devil story to at least getting a boost by Ben Franklin. That's the funniest part to me. is just the absolute hilarity that something that is still told 250, 270 years later can be linked to one of the founding fathers of the country. You know, and I love it. I think it's great. I think the story, the actual, you know, mythology is older, but it's going to be very difficult to research the older parts of it because it's been so conflated. You know, you look up the Leeds Devil and it reverts you to Jersey Devil, which may or may not be the same thing. And having to get access to some of those books, I don't have the money for that. They're behind damn paywalls. You know, I mean, oh yeah, the lore behind Ben Franklin is worth researching. You know, the fact that, I mean, and I don't know the truth of this, but I've heard both sides that he had slaves, but he also didn't treat them like slaves. But, you know, they found a body buried in his basement or something like that, or buried underneath the foundations of one of his homes. But we also have to remember that Ben Franklin wasn't often at home. And maybe it was one of the people that he left behind to watch over his people killed one of the slaves. If indeed this does end up being a slave, if he treated them like slaves, which he very well may have, I don't really know. But it could have been one of them and not bothering the master with all of this. Just buried it under the foundations and swept it under the rug and probably told Ben they ran away. I mean, we have to remember that there is a lot of escaped slaves that probably didn't escape because there were rules and regulations on keeping slaves. They weren't great, but there were certain conditions and terms that you could and couldn't do to your, as they put it at the time, farm equipment. Don't even get me started on that. That little verbal trickery. But I mean, in my opinion, we're back there again with modern world. You know, I mean, they pay us just barely over anything. And then they feed us all these lies. Oh, we can't afford that. Yet all these companies are making record profits. But you can't afford a pay raise. Sure as hell are raising your own pay rate. But that is not what I'm here to talk about. It is so easy for me to turn and go political with some of this stuff, and I hate it. I don't want to get too political. I want to keep it to the creepy. I want to talk about the creepy stuff. Well, it's October 1st, man. It's the beginning of Spooktober. And I want Spooktober to be fun, not, you know, aggravating. You know, I mean, think about it. You go back in, you know, Foo Fighters. And I'm not talking about the band, but what they were named after, or what they named themselves after. And how basically there were these balls of light that would follow people in World War II. And sometimes even exceeding their speed limit. At first, they thought it was basically the plane equivalent of St. Elmo's fire that would go and adhere to rigging and ships and stuff like that. Or is that St. Elmo's fire? Not St. Elmo's fire. That's the bacterium that glows. Whichever one was on ships. But it ended up not being that. Because these balls of light were existing outside of the planes themselves. They weren't on the plane. Yes, but St. Elmo's fire actually references a blue glow on wounds in the Civil War. That people that had that blue glow actually survived infections better than others. Which is why it was called St. Elmo. Because they thought it was named after a saint, a Christian saint. But there's another thing that used to hit ships that used to coat the rigging and sometimes parts of the sails and shroud them in a blue glow. And often Foo Fighters were described as a blue to white glow. What's the truth of those? I mean, were they seeing ball lightning because of the charged atmosphere of a war? Right. Or I'm conflating and it's St. Cuthbert's fire. Maybe was it St. Cuthbert? I conflate this all the time because they're very similar. But one is a blue glow that in the Civil War, basically it came down to a fungus, a bioluminescent fungus that was actually antibacterial to whatever infections that the soldiers would get. It was actually a weird infection that actually was a beneficial one. Yeah, I think that was St. Cuthbert's fire. Or St. Cuthbert's glow or something like. Again, I can't remember exactly. I didn't prep this part of it. I didn't think about, getting into this stuff, which, more my dumbass. But anyway, there is truth behind the Foo Fighters. I mean, some of these guys actually had electrical damage to their planes. Or what we now know as electrical damage, like partially welding of the hydraulics, partially welding of, not the hydraulics, the flaps, to where they couldn't maneuver properly. I'm wondering if they actually encountered ball lightning and going through it, caused parts of the plane to weld. So, I mean, who knows? But also it may be just, observers from another planet that were able to use plasma as some kind of baby wormhole that they were able to direct and point. Yeah, you couldn't get anything through it other than vision. Yeah, it would be an interesting thing to read up on. In fact, I probably will. But, that's a thought. Maybe Foo Fighters were just that. A plasma effect of a baby wormhole. And they were trying to observe, like think of a photonic telescope. Instead of an electron telescope, this was using pure photon, and probably in such a high concentration that it would cause these little wormholes that they figured out how to direct. And you could basically get instant viewing, from light years away, because you're using a wormhole effect. I mean, and this is just, I'm talking out my ass. I don't even know if that's even possible. But I mean, I guess I'd call it like a plasma lensing effect, where I guess technically you'd be seeing through time if you use a wormhole effect, because you're going across light years relatively instantaneously. But you can't bring matter through because it'd be completely destroyed, because it's a wormhole, which is just basically a baby black hole. Not exactly, but we'll leave that alone for a moment. It's just a fast way of getting from here to there. But scientifically, from what I remember, it's never sure if we'll ever get matter through it. We're pretty sure we could get energy through a wormhole, but not necessarily matter. So photons are pure energy, no mass. The only reason why they even simulate mass is because they're moving so fast. And you could probably use those to view things, which would explain a whole lot of our UFOs. Just lights in the sky, scanning us, seeing what's up. They may not even be aware that we can see it. To them, it may not be even seeable, that radiation on the other end. Because to them, it'd probably just be, basic cast off. But they're using pure photons to see, which is why it looks like a ball of light. But they're using it as a lens to look through. That's one explanation for Foo Fighters and UFOs. Because most often they're described as spherical, not necessarily saucers, which a wormhole effect would look like that. Just think about what you've seen of black holes, and black holes look like a sphere because its gravitational pull is unidirectional. You know, I mean, aliens could be, well, specifically UFOs, could be just a weird observation method that we are live. You know, stuff like that. You know, and again, you know, I'm not talking like I know exactly. I'm just saying that there's explanations, but that doesn't necessarily mean it is the explanation. You know, and that often I go back to when we're kids, we're told that the sky is blue because the planet's mostly blue, that it has to do with reflected water. And so the homogeneity of that would be blue. The reality is that it's just the lowest energy light, which means it's the most abundant. Basically, you're explaining something. Yeah, it makes sense that, you know, oh yeah, we're 70% water, so the reflected sky should be water. You know, and that explains why in deserts, you know, the sky looks a little bit yellower or something like that. It's like, well, actually, no, that has to do with particles in the air. I just like, I have a feeling, you know, like the Mandela effect. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with it, but where every kid, you know, you ask them to draw the sun and it's yellow. Yeah, no, see, it's because of the lowest energy of light is indigo or blue. And it's just because that's going to be the most abundant. It's also because light is retreating away from us when we look up. And so it goes through what's called blue shift. But every kid, you know, you tell them to draw a sun and they make it yellow. But our sun is actually white. I mean, think about it. Even Superman, you know, oh, he gets his powers from a yellow sun, but our sun's white. Look at it. Well, don't, because that hurts. But I think that our sun has changed colors to us, not the sun itself changing colors, but I think it has to do with more or less pollution in the air. Because what a lot of people don't realize is from the late 1700s to, I'd say, somewhere in the mid the mid 50s to 60s to 70s, when we started cleaning up our air and everything like that, you know, we actually have cleaner air than we have had in a long time. It's one of the reasons why I look at, you know, a lot of these people that start talking about, you know, climate change and all of that. It's like, but we're cleaner than we've ever been, you know, since the Industrial Revolution became a thing. And so I think it's because we've cleaned up our air. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, LA used to have fog warnings, or sorry, not fog, smog warnings. They would literally have warnings, don't go outside. You know, you had to have, you know, and including in old school England, when they had the acidic fog, you know, there was a reason why most of their colors were drab, because anything bright colored got ruined. You know, because they had so much coal dust, coal burn in the air. But now we don't do it as much. So while we might be doing away with some of, oh God, that is so dumb. That is so dumb. Coal is super inefficient. You'd be better off burning oil than coal. I mean, unless you are going to pulverize, liquefy the coal, it's super inefficient. Why would you bring back the coal industry? That's dumb. Bring back nuclear. We have some of the safest nuclear reactors we've ever had. I think you missed a couple of Ks there. I'm just saying that coal is dumb energy. It's dumb energy. Yes, we still have a bunch of it in abundance. We have, fields for mining, but it's not really useful. It's not really worth doing. I did. Well, mining industry is one of the least educated, highest quote unquote pay for what you do, but it has the highest exploitation. I mean, you take my uncle. My uncle lives in northern Nevada and he works for mining companies up there. And there is this gold conglomerate that runs the mines and the mining companies. All the mining companies got together and created a conglomerate so they can control what mines are open at any given time. And these people never really have any surety that work underneath of them. But these guys are often away from home 14 to 16 hours a day. I mean, these guys were so tired driving back and forth to work because the gold mines aren't going to, they're not going to put on 3 shifts. They put on 2. Right. Well, and they still do. They just don't use a company store, so to speak. The problem is that the company store could actually be done properly and it would be better for everyone. But basically what I'm trying to say is that the gold mines unionized, but the workers can't. See, and that's the dumb stuff. And those people are so indoctrinated. You mentioned union. They get super defensive. They get super like, oh, we don't do union here. And I remember looking at some of them and going, but the mine's unionized. I'm like, what? Well, that conglomerate they got. They do a collective bargaining between them to keep the price of gold stable so they can make the most money. Why can't you unionize? Oh, it's not the same thing. They have to work together or else they'll just dig it all out of the dirt. Well, yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. Unions have been exploitative and bullshit too. I mean, unions are good. And I will tell you the very fact that companies bust them, companies go out of their way to make them corrupt, tells me everything I need to know about a union and that it is ultimately better. I will take a corrupt union over a company any day, and I'll tell you why. Because the union gets paid through what I do when I work. The company gets paid from my work. So who has the higher benefit, higher reason to exploit me? The more I work for the company, the more money they make. The more I work through the union, the more money the union makes. Which one has a reason to keep me going? And which one has a reason to just use anybody in the spot? Now, we're talking small percentages here between the union because the union can always hire somebody else. You can always put somebody ahead of you. But that's also why there's union rules. I mean, there's no gender pay gap in unions, at least not in my wife's experience. My wife does the same work, gets the same pay, as long it's just down to the amount of hours you do. gender pay gap is kind of a BS thing in certain industries, in my personal opinion. And I personally think that the gender pay gap comes from what industry you work in. Now, in certain levels of business, C-suite levels and higher ups that the 90% of people will never even reach, yeah, there's a pay gap. Yeah, there's a glass ceiling and it needs to be broken. But it doesn't happen at McDonald's. It doesn't happen at Walmart. All these things that they make you afraid of. And it's like, no, it doesn't happen that way. And I mean, female coal miners make the same amount of money as male coal miners, to take it back to the thing. I mean, as much as I hate what leftists have become, I really don't like what the right has become either. They are both, rotting branches of a tree. Remember, you started this political crap. And I think both branches need to be pruned. Both Republicans and Democrats have long since lost sight of what people really need, who they're supposed to be fighting for. Pure and simple. They have lost sight of the real reason they're even in power. And that is to help everyone, to stabilize the country so that everybody can win. Right. Yeah, you started this. And it pisses me off that these people don't understand that that's what they've done. We often talk about, monetize your hobby so you can do this, so you can get this, and you can do that, and go over here and do that, and this, that, and the other thing, just to make ends meet. Yet, they can't even give us universal health care, yet every politician has universal health care. Senate, Congress, the very people that vote it down are the very people that won't lose anything if they vote it down. They've already got the health care. It's ridiculous. Which is funny because when you look at the C-suite donors, the big companies and donors that say, oh, we don't want to pay for that because a lot of it would come out of their taxes and their quote unquote profits. They've got universal health care too. They just pay it through the company. It's real easy for them to pay, to say, oh, my employees don't need the very same thing I get. Can you imagine the CEO of Walmart having the same medical care as their seasonal employee, their cashiers that work the self-checkout area? They'd be offended. Yeah, but they want constant fighting among each other. They don't want fighting, people looking at them and going, hey, you're the problem. I don't care what mask you're using, whether it's a donkey or a friggin', what is the other one? The other mascot? Elephant? I don't remember. Right? Yeah, okay, donkey and an elephant. I don't care what friggin' mask they're wearing. It's ridiculous. They no longer even understand. I mean, back in Bush, the first time, they were so disconnected, they didn't even know how much a gallon of milk cost. I can only imagine how disconnected they are now. Because they don't have to pay for half the stuff. I mean, even all the way back to Mark Twain's time. He was famous for saying, to those who have, much is given. Simple as that. I mean, you know how many movie stars, rock stars, celebrities don't have to pay to go to big restaurants because the restaurants literally get more customers because, oh, I saw Keanu Reeves eat here. Or I saw that, Taylor Swift ate here. I mean, I guarantee you, what is it? The Kansas City Chiefs, whichever one her future husband, I don't know, goes with. I'll bet that they've never been more popular with a certain demographic that's not normally popular with NFL. I mean, you got to see how unequal this really is because these guys barely pay for anything. And yet they just keep getting given more. And it's on our backs that they're being given it. I mean, do you think those movie stars that ate free at a restaurant tipped well? Do you think they passed it on to the server that treated them right? No, probably not. In fact, most people would be offended to even think about it. That server in that position, well, I seriously doubt it. Absolutely doubt it. I mean, it gets to the point where they expect it, where it is expected that the movie star doesn't have to pay. Well, that's ridiculous. I mean, and keep in mind, a lot of these movie stars are telling us we can't we have to watch our carbon footprint when they're using private jets. They're owning multi-million-dollar mansions for like 3 people, 15-bedroom place for 3 people. Why? Why do I have to watch my carbon footprint in my 1,000-square-foot home? And yet you can sit here and do all of this. Oh, because I'm supposed to offset your carbon footprint. I mean, I just have habits of reducing my waste. Right? Yeah. Yeah, that's tipping culture, which, wait a minute, why should tips be even baked into going out to eat? Doesn't that just tell you that the company doesn't pay their worker what they're worth? Why do I have to make up the difference? Doesn't that just show that the Cheesecake Factory is cheapskates? That Starbucks can't pay their employees a reasonable wage, so I have to make up for it? That's stupid. You're just proving that you can't pay your employees. And I wish more people understood that. That's all you're proving. You're expecting the people to come to your restaurant, pay you for food, and pay your employees. So what did you do as a company? What did you do? I'm not only paying you back for what you made me, but I also have to pay the cook and the waitress that served me. Or else they're not making enough to live. Tips are ridiculous. $10 an hour? I'm sorry. I've seen what waiters, servers, servers, the hosts at restaurants have to put up with, cooks at restaurants, dishwashers have to put up with. $10 an hour? $14 an hour. Eat 5% of your profit. Pay these people a wage that could actually rent them an apartment on their own. You need to start pitting industries against each other. You want to watch how fast wages and housing prices become real quick in balance? You start setting a minimum payment of employment, minimum wage, based on the average housing cost. That's all. Not groceries, not gas, average housing cost. that you have to make 3 times as much as a 1-bedroom apartment as minimum wage for a 40-hour work week. That's minimum wage. Guess what you just did? You stabilized housing prices and you stabilized minimum wage. That's it. That's all it takes. Because real estate is the major driver in every other price. Groceries cost so much because it costs them rent for the land, or the development cost for the land to make the grocery store. Real estate prices. Every company is a real estate company. I don't care what they make, what good or service they provide. They're a real estate company. And if you tie minimum wage to the minimum, livable space for one person, 1-bedroom apartment, not a studio, that's for college kids, a 1-bedroom apartment, and you have to make 3 times as much per month on a full-time job, 40-hour week. And you have to have a certain number of full-time employees per, square footage of your grocery store. Not part-time employees, full-time. And I'm sure there's a whole bunch of things I'm forgetting, but that should be the bottom line. That should be the basics right there. Oh yeah, people are going to scream, cry, and throw up because the house they bought isn't going to accrue as much in value over time. Well, then maybe you shouldn't be buying a house strictly on profit. Maybe you should be buying a house to live in it, rather than buying 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 just to rent it out at a higher value. Because I guarantee you, somebody that sits there with a rental, I guarantee you, they don't think about lowering the price once they pay off the mortgage. I guarantee you. They use what you're now paying in rent, even though they paid off the mortgage for their house, to buy another house so they can rent it out to somebody else, further keeping that bar away from everybody else from owning a house, keeping the American dream just out of step. I guarantee you that's what's happening. And you still have people sitting there trying to buy property, but when it's no longer a cash cow to own property and rent it out, maybe other people could afford to buy a house. Maybe you've stabilized, pricing so it doesn't automatically go up 6% each year, which is a ridiculous idea that your house has to go up 6% each year. Well, it's not even so much as if you want to make $15, learn a trade. One, trades are easy. You don't have to go to college to learn a trade. You don't even have to go to a trade school. You give 3 months of apprenticeship type training, and then you learn the rest of the way through the job. Well, 150% to keep up with the raise of minimum wage. I don't think that would be feasible, because here's the thing, T-Row. They'd automatically have to raise wages to even those that are higher up. Because you know what happens when suddenly brand new Andy that just came on makes just as much as long-term Larry? Long-term Larry goes over and finds another job. that is going to pay him better. He's going to move around to find a better paying job, more in step with his loyalty, more in step with. So you don't need to sit there and worry about raising the minimum wage or the wages of everybody else, really. Because I guarantee you, companies will have to. And companies will have to stop posting these record profits and say they can't afford to hire those 3 or 4 people they said they were going to hire. That's ridiculous. They're making people do the job of 3 and 4 people and saying we can't afford to hire more. Yet, just so they get their tax breaks, they keep saying that they, we're hiring, but they're not actually hiring. They're ghost jobs. They're put out there for a tax break. See, we're looking for more people, but they're just not here. Nobody wants to work. And that's a myth they've been trying to say. And it's like, it's bullshit. It's just like with, people talking about socialism. Oh, nobody would work then. Bullshit. People get bored. They want to work. People want to do things. And you take out all of the stress that the job now has to pay for itself, pay for my bills, pay for this, and I can just do what I want to do. Jeez. Guess how many jobs that aren't, people just don't want to work doing this. They don't want to work at a grocery store. They don't want to work at a convenience store. And all of a sudden, they will. You'll have people, beating down the doors. And people will be bored. And sure, there's going to be a certain number of people that just don't want to work. That's fine. You need somebody to consume all this stuff that's being produced. Simple as that. You need consumers. That should be their job too. Somebody's making new YouTube videos. Well, somebody has to consume them. Somebody has to tell you whether it's good or bad. Like, oh, I liked this one. Not a particular fan of this one. That could be somebody's job. They're basically a critic. Wait, that can be a paid job? Oh, wait, we pay people to do it now. They're just friggin' hoity-toity and they don't even understand their job anymore. A critic should be about, did they play the part properly? Was the movie done properly, internally consistent, doing its job properly, to tell the story and convey the story in a way that's understandable? That should be a critic's job. Was it believable? No matter how ridiculous the premise, did the actors, did the movie, the viewing, did all of that make it look good? Did you believe it in the moment? Good. That's its job. Or did that YouTuber do a, pseudo documentary on the rise of AI or whatever? Did they convey the idea in a proper way? Did you understand what you were watching? Yes, it was good. Thumbs up. If it was bad, give proper critiques. Don't just say you're bad and you should feel bad. Give proper critiques. Tell them what they're doing wrong. I mean, sure, that's not somebody's job right now, but well, if you don't tell me what I'm doing wrong, how am I supposed to fix it? You should just know. That would assume that I'm doing bad on purpose. And I think that's what a lot of companies think people do. That they do bad on purpose. Never mind that they're shit at training. They are absolutely garbage at training people because they forget that the average person only retains 75% of what they're trained on. So that trainer only knows 75% of the job. So now that trainer is training a person who's only going to retain 75%. Which is why we're now down to this point where people don't really understand their jobs. They don't know what they're supposed to do. They don't know how to do their job, and they're lost. And that's the trainer, let alone, the person that's supposed to be doing the job. And it's your fault for not paying attention. Well, maybe it's your fault for not teaching it properly. Maybe it's the company's fault for having poor materials on teaching. Did you have anybody check over your training manual? Like, are you conveying these properly? There's actually English majors specifically for this. Copy editing, proofreading, conveying, business English. So it's written simply so you can understand it step by step, not skipping steps. How do you explain to somebody to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? You take 2 pieces of bread, put peanut butter on it, put jelly on it. Okay. Most people will understand that you're supposed to take the peanut butter out of the jar. Oh, of course. They keep it vague, although they forget that means they pay more in insurance. Because if that person can pull out their training manual and go, well, this is how I was taught to do it, at that insurance hearing, on whether or not that, if that person has the ability to fight it, which, again, is probably why personal injury is one of the highest paid insurance, lawyers in the Americas. Why do you think personal injury has been the highest lawyers, division of lawyers since the 80s? Often, shoot, if my wife didn't, hire a personal injury lawyer when she got injured at work, she would have been screwed over. Always get yourself a lawyer. 9 times out of 10, they don't even take money unless you win. Most of those assessments for injuries on, at work are free. They will assess your case for free to begin with. They don't start getting paid until you actually sign on the bottom line. And they only get paid a percentage of what you get in court. And I guarantee you, they're going to get you more in court than the company's going to pay you without a lawyer. Even though the lawyer takes their 10, 15, 20% off, depending on your lawyer, depending on your state, how much they can take. But I guarantee you, you're going to get more. Oh, that's because companies give them a bad rap. Sure, there are certain injury lawyers that are garbage. Yeah, ambulance chasers is one of them. Yeah. But again, are they just put that way because companies want them to seem that way? Or are they trying to get that person the best deal possible? Remember, in media, they're shown as being, ambulance chasers, sleazy, slimy scumbags. My experience with a personal injury lawyer is they were actually very nice, very good at their job. And my wife got a decent payout, plus fought for her to get her proper physical therapy. And she's got most of the movement back in her shoulder, where they originally thought she was going to be permanently disabled and they wanted her to just be permanently disabled. Instead, she's actually able to keep going back to work instead of collecting disability. Why do you think football players, NBA players, sports stars can have some of these what should be career-ending injuries, and yet next season they come back? Right? And that's what I'm saying is that you have to go get a personal injury lawyer. You may not like it. It may make you feel bad, but the simple fact is insurance is going to fight you. The company's going to fight you. You have to fight for yourself. And if you can find somebody that will fight for you, totally worth it. In my experience, in the, personal case of my wife, oh yeah, the company doesn't give a shit about you, which is another reason why you need unions. Sure, the union may not 100% give a shit about you, but their whole job is keeping you working. And that's my big problem. It's my big problem right now. It's like companies, oh, you have to give 2 weeks notice. Why? Would you give me 2 weeks notice before you fired me? No, you wouldn't. Why should I give you 2 weeks notice before I fire your dumbass? It's like, I don't quit a job. I fire a company. Hell, 9 times out of 10, unless it was my fault, which, I've lost my job due to my own fault, and I get it. That company has lost my business, and I will talk to anybody I can on why you shouldn't work for that company, why you shouldn't go to that company, why you shouldn't give that company your money. Or even that particular store. You know, hey, you shouldn't go to that McDonald's. You should go to that one over here. I know it's a little bit further, but those guys are dicks. Those guys are cool. That kind of thing. Loyalty does exist, just not among companies. You know, company to employee loyalty doesn't exist at all. You can work for the company 20 years, and as soon as they think they can get something more out of somebody else, you're gone. You're downplayed. You know, this is why I advocate for, what is it called? It's not right to work, or is it right to work? It sounds so oxymoronic, but the company, you know, they don't have to have a reason to fire you, but you also don't have to have a reason to leave. Because I think there should be equal right to work. I think there should be a give and take. If a company wants to fire you, they should have to really have to think about it. You know, not only that, but I mean, companies forget that, you know, they don't promote certain workers because they lose too much productivity. But they should promote, if that worker's that good, promote them to trainer. Even if you're only, you know, the people are only retaining 75%. You have one trainer training people at a higher level than the other trainers because they know their job. And you get 4, 5, 6 at 75% of what that one worker was. You're above board. You're doing better. You know, you don't sit there, whine, moan, and complain and say, oh, I can't promote you because I lose too much productivity on the floor. You'll promote me to trainer. I'll train people on how to do my job. Even worse is I've done that and got fired because I trained my replacement. Hell, one time I even trained my replacement after I was fired because I saw he was struggling. And it wasn't the person's fault. Green Jeans was so good at his job, the company was going to make him like a regional trainer. So why didn't he take it? That would have been great. Probably good money. Put up in motels every once in a while. That's a good job. Why not? They're going to pay for the travel. I mean, shoot, my wife gets paid for the travel. You know, this job that she just got today, you know, is 4 and some odd hours away. You know, she's going to get, I know, but at some point, you know, what's more important? Making a future in the long haul or what's right now? Don't get me wrong, role playing is fun. I absolutely love it. But I think he also forgot that regionals have better vacation windows. Just saying. But hey, his choice. He did what he wanted to do, and that's fine. I've made plenty of choices the same. You know, but because my wife's working so far from home, she's going to be getting like $100 a day just, you know, because she's going to have to get a motel. You know, I mean, I'm not going to be seeing her probably for months again. Now I'll probably see her over Thanksgiving. So, you know, it'll be, you know, a couple of months. Well, exactly. I mean, I'm not trying to say he made a bad decision. I don't know the full story either. You know, I mean, if it was just his bare bones, T-Row, it ain't the first time. I used to be a merchant marine. It used to be 4 months at a time before I saw my family. You know, this is only a couple of months at a time. You know, but this job is supposed to be a 10-year job, which means she's got at least, 3 to 4. Because, I mean, oh, it's not ideal. It just means we're going to save up. Probably this time next year, give or take. I'll probably be moving over there. You know, I mean, it's that simple. You know, get a place, move in, just like we did before. You know, we did this last year. It's not that big of a deal. I mean, it sucks. Don't get me wrong. Oh, Abilene. On the other side, 3 hours even further away from you guys. But I think it's actually, I don't know. I mean, it was either that or I think a possible Amarillo, and I'm not sure where the hell Amarillo is. It's been a long time since I thought about that. And where the hell is that one? Oh, dang. Amarillo's a long ways away. Yeah. But I mean, both places look fine. I don't have any complaints. Not really. I mean, she's going to get a good, good wage, good benefits. I'm going to complain at all. I don't know, man. The world's just a funny place. Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm now going to be rolling around, basically by my lonesome this whole place. 3-bedroom place. Unless we can switch down to a 2-bedroom like we want to. Because, I mean, I don't need this much space. But I still want to have a spare bedroom. Well, I'm going to turn that one actually into the office. And actually make it stick this time. Well, because I originally decided to, make the office, and then it didn't work out the way I wanted it to. Mainly because I decided to stream, do this stuff instead of what I was doing before. And yeah, that's different. And that's why I sit here in my front room. Hell, I might do it again. I don't know. I mean, again, I'm just going to be me. Well, me and the cat. Hey, what's up, Jade? A little late. What, did Twitch finally send out a notification? I know it's been a bear about that. Took a nap. Okay. Hey, I'm not complaining. I totally understand naps. We were originally talking about, the truth behind cryptids, but, T-Row got me talking about coal mines and unions and companies and politics because, I can't stay away from that stuff. No matter how much I tried to make this one more of like a creepy October thing. No, T-Row. Actually, I mean, you know me. It's so easy Exactly. See, there you go. That's what I'm trying to say is it's so freaking easy. I do it myself. I it's something, right? It's just something that, I feel strongly about, so I have to speak about it. And I mean, one, you both know how I feel about people abusing their power. And there is nothing that pisses me off more at all, whether it's politicians, whether it's parents, whether it's frickin' corporations. Abusing your power is probably the biggest pet peeve of mine. And I will do everything I possibly can to tear apart your power if I can prove that that's what you've done. Hey, I've even got a bedroom that you'd have to share with the cat. But I got a spare bedroom even with a bed. Well, shoot, in a few weeks, if this job of the wife's works out, I'll be able to visit again. No matter how much I hate driving through Walkwall. But I would do it. But I mean, more than welcome to come over too. But I mean, got to work on a few things first. Because we're trying to see if we can downsize and get into a 2-bedroom place rather than the 3-bedroom. Because I mean, it's just the two of us. We don't need that much space. And plus, that just still leaves a spare bedroom. Because the more I think about it, the more likely I'm probably just going to leave my setup out here. Well, the cat needs her place because she got used to it. I am probably going to, the cat will have the spare bedroom. I'm not going to leave her food and water and stuff like in the bedroom like it is now. I'm going to have her get used to it being out here, especially if it's down to me taking care of her. I need that to be more front and center so I can see it, because for me, out of sight, out of mind. Right? No, 12 by 12 room. The cat sleeps on a queen size bed. Because it used to be Tater's bed. And I mean, still technically is. I don't know why it still technically is hers. She paid for it. It is her bed. But, yeah, the cat sleeps on a queen size bed that is just hers. And I have to remember every couple of weeks at the latest to swap the sheets off so it doesn't get too furred. Clean up after her, vacuum up after her. I don't know. It's just goofy stuff like that, taking care of the animal. Yeah. Yeah, that wouldn't last long with me. I have boundaries. My cat knows it. I mean, she rarely ever bugs me when I'm streaming. She tried like once and I told her to bug off. So she hasn't done it since. Because, she knows I don't stand for it. Right? Oh, Ash is a very smart cat. Yeah. Ash never really, I mean, she likes to play a little bit, but not a whole lot. But I'm sure once the wife is off to work and it's just her and I, she'll want to play more. Because that's just how she is with me. Like if nobody else is around, suddenly she wants to play. She wants to do things. She wants to be goofy, do this, do that. But, you know, if Tater or the wife are home, she can't show too much love. And I don't get it. I don't understand. Like I have this string that I think it was old shoelaces that I tied together, and I go kitty fishing. It's not so much as play favorites. She can't let anybody know that she actually likes me. And it's hilarious. It offends her that she might actually enjoy my company. Because when Tater and the wife are home, she'll go to them. But if it's just me, I mean, she'll jump up on the couch next to me where I have my stuff, and she'll look at me and, you know, meow and want pets. She'll be at the edge of my chair meowing. Yeah, like literally it is keep up appearances. Or I'll have that string and I'll, you know, play with her. You know, we got this ottoman and I swing the string over the top of it. And she'll come and attack it. And, you know, I go kitty fishing. And it's friggin' hilarious. But if somebody else is home, she won't play. She won't do that. You know, she'll play with them, but not with me. And she won't play with them nearly as long as she'll play when I do it. Yeah, I mean, it is just super hilarious how she acts. But man, she whines now if I don't stop before I, you know, go into bed. If I don't scratch her on the head and tell her goodnight. If I forget or something like that, she started picking up what Scruff used to do. You know, when I'd come in and say goodnight to him, you know, and if I forgot, he'd do a little boof. But no, she'll, like, if I walk by and I forget to scratch her, she's like, meow. And it's this annoyed meow. Right? Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not complaining. I have company. You know, and I think more than most people, I am equipped mentally. I mean, especially what I learned on shipping, to handle being by myself. I know that sounds weird. Like, yeah, you know, once a month or so, you know, every couple of weeks, you know, I want to get out and I want to do something. But that's it. You know, I really don't need that much social interaction. You know, I mean, I get plenty just sitting here talking with you guys. I enjoy the hell out of this. You know, so I mean, I'm not super worried about just being alone here. You know, I've got a lot to take care of. I've got a lot of irons in the fire. Yeah. I love it when you're here and I love it when you're talkative. But I also understand you have a life. There are things that you do. I'm not going to sit here and complain. Well, and Wednesday's normally my best night. Like tonight, I think it's been a little bit slower than normal, but I'm not that worried about it. I mean, CT and I were on at 2 our time. And we still only had like 2 people, 3 people. But again, I'm not super worried about it. I mean, we just sat here and talked movies. You know, I can't say as I'm super worried about, you know, a lot of people. I mean, don't get me wrong. I like having people. And shoot, when the wife goes to work, I'll probably hook up my my cam. Oh yeah, the numbers have been down the last few weeks. I get that. I'm just riding that out. I'm not going to sit here and worry about it. But, you know, I might just hook up my cam and just, you know, have me, you know, in a corner somewhere so you guys can see me. Say hi. I just haven't done it because, you know, the wife doesn't really want to be on camera. I think it's not just the Twitch thing. I think it has more to do with just people going back to school. Times are hard and people are just having to more pick what they do with their time. You know, I mean, times are tough. I don't care what people think. Times are tough, and we hear so much about politics and this stuff, and people are going to follow that more so than anything else. Anytime there's political upsets, anything that doesn't have to deal with the political spectrum, whether it's YouTube or Twitch, drops dramatically. Which then, you know, Twitch and YouTube, you know, their algorithm starts spitting that out to people. And the fact is that people don't really need to hear that much about politics. Where they have a body in the barn and it comes back every so many years. I don't know if I've ever watched that one. Or if I have, I'm not understanding it from what you're saying. You know, yeah, the government shutdown thing going on. Big freaking whoop. It's right before they would have shut down anyway. You know, they just took an extra month off. You know, I mean, people forget that they do this quite often, especially because didn't they, all the way back when Biden first got in, didn't they threaten a government shutdown back then at the end of his first year? You know, right before Thanksgiving, when everybody just wanted to go to home to the holidays. You know, I mean, they do this every 4 years or so, sometimes every 2, just whenever the budget comes up and like, oh, you know, well, we're not going to, you know, do this, so we're just going to shut it down. It's like, oh, come on. You know, so the government shut down. Does that mean the law, you know, has been canceled? I mean, so do I not have to pay taxes during this time because you're shut down? You know, I'm not getting anything out of you anyway? Well, of course not. They can shut down and have their vacation because they can't friggin' agree. But we don't see any benefit from it. In fact, all we see is negative. They whine, bitch, and moan about getting paid even though they're shut down. Like, why are you getting paid? You know, you guys are basically striking, but you're still getting paid for it. That's BS. You know, if you're not going to do work, you shouldn't get paid. Just the same as anybody freaking else. But no, they're not the same as everybody else. They're better. They're, you know, more respected. They're more blah. Was that Jeepers Creepers? That's a good movie. I like the first one anyway. I don't think I've seen the second one. I would have never thought about it. A body at a barn and comes back I would not have gotten that from Jeepers Creepers. Funny thing is that Jeepers Creepers is actually based on a real story, on a true story about a serial killer dumping bodies. And a couple like drove past and saw, you know, them dumping the body. And the guy kind of rode their ass for a while, so they were able to get the license plate. I mean, we're talking loosely based, and find out that basically this guy was a serial killer. Or maybe it wasn't license plate, maybe it was just a description, because even the truck in the original Jeepers Creepers was very similar to the vehicle that real life person used. Like I said, it's very loosely based, but it is based on a true story, which I thought was interesting. Yep, the green truck and found him dumping a body. Now, he wasn't a demon, like, you know, like it was shown in the Jeepers Creepers movie, but I don't know. I just found that interesting that Jeepers Creepers was actually pretty damn good. You know, based on loosely based on this true story. And it just goes to show. Well, I mean, shoot, a lot of people don't realize that, you know, Nightmare on Elm Street is loosely based on a real story, on a true story. They were from Southeast Asia. I can't remember which area, but there were a bunch of immigrants that were falling. You caught half the movie. That would fall asleep and die in their sleep. And it come to be that there was this myth about, I can't remember, but basically what we would call a witch doctor, no matter how, problematic that may or may not be. Right. Oh, I love the Nightmare on Elm Street series to a point. I think I really kind of tuned out after 4 or 5. My sister watched all of them. I mean, that's the only reason why I even know anything about them. She was really into the Nightmare on Elm Street. Friday the 13th. I like Friday the 13th. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, even Nightmare on Elm Street's based on a true story. Very, very, very loosely. Freddy vs. Jason. No, that wasn't very good. Oh, wait, you actually watched the Freddy vs. Jason Nightmare? Oh, Freddy vs. Jason was... Yeah, it wasn't good. It looked like it was a lot of fun to film, though, in which I will give it that. If you pay attention to the actors playing it, they looked like they had a lot of fun playing that role. They looked like it was a lot of fun for them. And that always makes me happy. Like, I think it's one of the reasons why I don't particularly like Marvel movies. And I know I'm in a vast minority. But the actors don't look like they're having fun like they were in the original. The original, like, say, first 4 years. The actors looked like they were having a lot of fun and enjoying themselves and doing. But, after... And my marker is Civil War. After Civil War, they were garbage. I mean, they had their problems prior to that, but I could at least watch them. After that, the actors just aren't having fun. They don't enjoy their job. And that tells me everything I need to know about what they're doing. Like, I watched the new Naked Gun. Sure, it was a mediocre movie, but it looked like everybody had a lot of fun and really enjoyed the experience. It didn't look like production hell. Oh, shoot. Is it? Oh, it's really close. Okay. Sorry, I got to notice that I was going to have an ad in 10 minutes. You mean Eric Bana? Eric Bana, B-A-N-A. So I'm glad to know that I'm not the only one. At least I'm assuming you meant Eric Bana. I don't know who Eric Bethia is. Okay. Yeah, because Mark Ruffalo, garbage. Bruce Banner. He showed zero arrogance. And that's who Bruce Banner is. In fact, Cryptic and I were talking about this literally this afternoon, that Mark Ruffalo was garbage. I mean, there's plenty of other roles he could have played and played well. He could not play Bruce Banner. I could have seen him as Reed Richards. Not a great Reed Richards, but he would have done a better Reed Richards. I could have seen him as playing the Beast, or Hank McCoy, if you will. There's a lot of roles that I could have seen Mark Ruffalo play. Bruce Banner, no. Mark Ruffalo can't do arrogant and better than you. He just can't. Not without making it look campy and jokey. He pisses me off. I mean, Edward Norton did a really good job, but Eric Bana encapsulated, it bridged the gap between the old Incredible Hulk TV show. Oh, Bill Bixby? Bill Bixby was brilliant because you always saw that arrogance eke out. Like, he kept trying to help people, just like in the comics. Hulk Thank you, Green Jeans. And a 4-month streak at that. Right at the end, dude. You know that I'm going to be like putting it up in like 5 minutes. But Bill Bixby, like when you started, I mean, especially his interactions with the journalist, you could see Bill Bixby and that arrogance come out. You could see that line getting crossed, and that's Bruce Banner. Oh, news that makes me laugh. I'm waiting. Still waiting. So were you asked to make cinnamon rolls only use cardamom, so they're synonym rolls? Ty Lopez got arrested. Which one is Ty Lopez? Why do I have a feeling I should know who this is? I know the name. Oh, yeah, I was just watching him. Friggin' CoffeeZilla or Voidzilla just did a thing about him. Yeah, I'm here in my garage. Yeah, bullshit. Yeah, Ty Lopez, I mean, such a grifter. Like, my God, dude. I'm here in my garage with my brand new Lamborghini. You know, if you're an investment dude, like if you're a financier, if you know about money, why are you buying one of the most wasteful cars that you will never get your return on? You want to talk about depreciation? Drive a Lambo off the lot. You will never sell it. And if you do, it will never be for the price you paid. Ever. There is no, like with some cars, bounce back up. Right. Well, yeah, he's the same influencer that he and his partner bought friggin' the rights to the name Radio Shack, and they're drop shipping. You know, basically they're just using these old names for e-commerce sites like Pier 1, Radio Shack. I can't remember any of the others. Yeah, Ponzi scheme. Yeah, because he was paying off investors with new investor money, you know, classic Ponzi scheme. No, it's not a Ponzi scheme. I call it the pyramid of wealth. And it's me at the top. That's a pyramid scheme. I mean, triangle of wealth, still the same thing, bud. No, it's like when everybody below me like really pushes forward and we all make money, but I make the most. That's a pyramid scheme. I mean, it's so funny because every corporation's a pyramid scheme. You know, the one at the top makes the most money. Everybody below makes slightly less until you get to the very bottom rung where people make pennies compared to what the top guy makes. That's a pyramid scheme. And often, you know, I mean, it's one of the reasons why I hate gig work. It's why I hate DoorDash and all of that BS. I mean, and don't get me wrong. I know it's the way a lot of people make money, you know, and make ends meet. Obviously he did. It was called how. Yeah, I mean, well, I keep waiting for friggin' what's the other rich guy's name? He's getting really old. Makes me think of the guy that sings Cheeseburger in Paradise. But it's not him. It's the same name, or not the same name, but similar. My God, why can't I remember? Warren Buffett. There we go. Warren Buffett. I keep waiting for it to be proven that he has severely manipulated markets. But I mean, he's like 80, 90 years old now. You know, even if he did any time, it'd be a lot. You know, if he even put in 5 years, it'd be life. Why not? I love burgers. Besides, my uncle used to live in Paradise Valley and barbecue burgers all the time. I used to go, I think, at least once a month to go have, a cookout with him over in Paradise Valley, Nevada. Bacon cheeseburger. Don't forget the jalapeno. And especially if you like grill the jalapeno, then slice it up and put it on the burger. Oh, so good. Mushrooms and jalapenos. I could go for that. I definitely could go for that. But yeah, it's time, guys. I'm sorry. And I don't want you guys to have to sit through another freaking ad break. Because it's complaining at me. In fact, I just delayed it for a little bit. Oh. See, now you're taking me back to when I was a kid in northern Nevada, and I would get this stuff. Like my next door neighbor, that their family would cook it, or we'd cook. And yeah, cream cheese stuffed. Oh, especially if you have grilled the jalapenos. And I don't mean like put them under a broiler. I mean like actually pull out your barbecue and you cut the top off and you set it upright, to where the hole for the jalapeno, if you can, set it upright over the grill. Set a bunch of those up. So they sit there and smoke from the inside. Put them on the top rack thing that when you open it up. Using toothpicks actually helps with keeping them stable. But you cook them upright that way. And then, just when it starts getting soft on the inside, then you put it down on the lower heat to char the outside a little bit, then stuff them. But anyway, I am going over time. It has been a wonderful evening, and I am so glad you all showed. I have enjoyed the hell out of it.